Hi everybody and welcome back to my modeling channel. So today we're going to build a Fokker 28 on scale 1/44 from Gatwick. So it's a resin model, and I have to say that I purchased this a long time ago. So I don't think they are still making them. You can maybe purchase them on eBay. Anyway, now you have F-Rsin who's doing them in injected plastic. So that aircraft was, as you can see, really nicely done actually, but you don't have any panel lines or anything, but the shapes are really beautiful and correct. So what we have here, you can see maybe from there that there will be on the under the lower part of the fuselage there has been some misshape. So there will be some correction and a lot of sanding later on, mainly between the wing root and the underbelly of the aircraft. The rest, the lower fuselage seems to be quite well aligned, so there won't be too much work. But you can see as well that there is a lot of little dust. I will try to show you different angle, but you have lots of little dots like that. And those are little holes those are bubbles basically were in the resin, and they didn't put the vacuum, in a vacuum within the resin. So they are still here, and I will have to remove them. So I will have to do a lot of, initially I will have to wash the plane with some dishwash liquid, and to make sure that to dry it and to remove all the chemicals around it. Then I will have to add a lot of putty, again a lot of putty and a little bit of sanding to remove all that, to cover all those little holes. We will have that unfortunately on the old aircraft. Now we're gonna check our wings as well, and the wings are as well in resin. As you can see, they are in pretty good quality. I mean, you have fine engravements, you have the panel lines on the wings, you also have all the air brakes who have been designed here, but also a lot of little bubbles remain, so we're gonna have to remove those bubbles again and wash them. I mean, wash them first. So I'm trying to find a correct exposure where I could show you basically all those little holes. It's gonna be a little bit difficult. Maybe I need to change position of the light, and you can see them from here and onward. So you can see that there is a lot of irregularity on the top, and that has to be corrected. Now we're gonna move on to the tail. So we have the fin. And the fin is exactly the same as the other parts, in resin, with a lot of little bubbles remaining, so we're gonna have to do some extra work. But beside that, I mean, the assembly is gonna be easy, it's just the sanding. Now the worst part are those little tiny engines, because there is a lot of bubbles. I'm quite surprised. I was expecting a better result. I don't know if you can see all those little bubbles. So, but there will be some work on that definitely, and then we'll be able to close and put that tail all together, and then we'll be able to move on. And the undercarriage is in white metal with some with the wheels. I have to say that we are lucky, because most of the wheels are in the correct, I mean not the correct shape, but at least they don't have any bubbles left. So that's it for this little kit. It's gonna be pretty nice. It's gonna fit perfectly in my vitrine, as I don't have any Fokker 28. So enough of talking, and let's start building. So we're gonna start this build by preparing our parts, and as it's a resin kit, most of the time you have some remaining of some chemicals. So what you need to do is you need to clean all the parts with some alcohol, or I'm using normally some of the liquid I'm using in the airbrush cleaner. and normally you get rid of all the chemicals around the models. So you have to do that first in view to have a proper surface, and also you will see that lots of little bubbles are coming out of the model, and you will have to cover them later on with some putty. So now what we will do is I will use some white putty, and I will try to cover all those little bubbles remaining from the mold. So and also, well, there is on that model some previous issue on the junction between the two of the fuselage parts, so I have to remove that. And as you can see, it's a very thin layer basically of putty that I'm putting on some parts, and that's really to absorb all those little bubbles that you can see on the models. So that's one of the major tasks on that aircraft that I had to do, but the rest was pretty simple. So after curing time and a curing period of about 8 to 9 hours for that white putty, it's time to remove all the extra putty that we have on the models, and try to have really a smooth surface with all those bubbles covered. So as you will see, preparing the parts basically is the longest task you have on that models. Some resin models have less, plus or minus less, some of those bubbles coming out. So it always depends if you are able to have a vacuum pump. If you have a vacuum pump, then you are able to get rid of all those bubbles, but it's quite difficult. So that's mainly the major task you have on those resin model. It will always ask you and require basically to prepare the parts with putties and get really those nice surfaces. So you have to go through all the parts one by one, and that can take a little bit of time. Now that our parts are ready, we're gonna start to work on the assembly. So we'll work on the tail, and for this I'm always using some super glue, and then we're gonna mount basically the wings on the fuselage. And super glue is normally what it will require. The regular glue will not have a correct bond on those parts, so you have to be a little bit patient, make sure that you are right, you have the right alignment, and then you are able to work this out. Of course, after that we'll have to require, and we'll have to cover all those little gaps, because there will still be gaps between those parts. And of course, well, for this we're gonna use some putty, and we're gonna have to let it cure and remove it. So we will now mount the engines on the fuselage, and earlier on it took me a little bit of time to make sure that I had the correct position, so I used basically a pencil to make some marks, and as the surface basically of those engine pylons are not really correct and they're not adhering completely to the fuselage, then you add a little bit of a thin extra glue, and then of course we will put that on our engine mount. So we will now remove the extra putty on the stabilizer and the fin, and for this I will use the regular sandpaper with the 600 grit. So after that there will be a little bit of rescribing, as some of the panel lines have been removed during the process by the putty. So for this I will use a rescribing tool, and then we're gonna remove also all the extra putty that we have on those engine mounts. So after preparing all those parts, now we are going to add the vertical fin or the stabilizer on the model, and for this of course I will use a regular super glue, and then of course we'll have to fill those gaps with some putty. So it's now time to move to the paint booth, and I will give a coat of light gray color to the wings and stabilizer. So for this it's a mix, 50% light gray, 50% glossy white, and sometimes depending on the result, sometimes I'll add more or less, but it's mainly I'm using mainly the ball dye for that color. So we will now prepare the wings anti-ice initially, and then we're gonna put the cowl anti-ice as well, and we're gonna put the leading edge as well on the horizontal stabilizer, and then we're gonna of course let it dry, and then we'll be able to move on to the glossy white overall coating on the whole fuselage and tail, and that's gonna be the one we're gonna use for that Air France livery. So while the fuselage is drying out, we are going to move on to our undercarriage, and for this I will use as well for the rims. I'm gonna use that light gray color that I've been using for the wings. So after that, now we're gonna start working on the decaling process. I work with some ATP decal. They were pretty old, and unfortunately I realized later on that they have kind of yellowish color on the clear parts, so it's a little bit sad, but nevertheless I wanted to make that livery, that Air France livery, for a long time, as I remember going on Marseille airport and spotting that aircraft on the ramp when I was something like maybe 15 years old, or even maybe a little bit younger. So that was a kind of nostalgia. I visited the aircraft, took some pictures in the cockpit at that time. So those were a great memory. That's why I wanted to do that aircraft very much. So now we're gonna come back to our decaling process, and I have to say that the tail decals are require a little bit of dexterity and experience, because you have to do a lot of cutting, and there is some irregular surface, so you're gonna need some decal solution as well to make sure that everything is fine. And then of course with a little bit of time and patience you can get a pretty decent result. We'll now add our windscreen and cockpit windows, and there is a little bit of a positioning to do, but nothing too difficult. I have to say the good point about those decals, they were pretty easy to handle. They were not too fragile. You could work your way around it easily, so they didn't break up too easily, and they are thin enough. Well, the sad part is, yeah, you got those, as they are pretty old, you get that little yellowish color on that part, and you can see that, I mean, when you're adding, I mean, windows and doors. As you can see, we can see that the center of the doors is a kind more yellowish color than the rest of the aircraft. But nevertheless, it's still an interesting little model, and if I'm getting tired of it, maybe at some points I'll find some other decals and another livery, and that will be the purpose to make another video. So let's keep it this way at the moment, and keep adding all those decals to get a pretty nice result for that Fokker 28. While the decals are drying out, now we're gonna move on to our tires, and I will paint the tires with a matte black from Tamiya, and I will get it all around basically those tires. The gear assembly requires a little bit more work than I expected. So basically, I had to add some holes to be able to center basically the wheels with the undercarriage leg, and but that was not such a difficult thing to do. And then, of course, as there was nothing on the fuselage itself, I had to cut and pre-mark basically where I will put the undercarriage. So I had to take some marks on the aircraft. There is also basically the nose cone has also some black color, so I made basically the marks where I would be able to paint it out. Then of course, using super glue, now we are going to put our wheels on the undercarriage, and of course we'll have to correct a little bit the tires, as they were some paint was removed while we were cutting them out from the mold. Then of course we're gonna fix that one directly on the undercarriage. I didn't make basically the wheel well. Well, the plane is not big enough, and it would have required really a huge amount of work for not such a big detail. So I decided just to pass on this one and continue it. So after that, I realized that I needed a little bit extra more volume. The holes were not big enough, and then we will be able to fix the undercarriage, I mean the nose gear, inside that fuselage. Then we're gonna move on to the main landing gear, and of course, as you can see, I mean, it's not an easy part. Then you have to remove all the extra resin on the undercarriage. So for this, you're using razor blade saw, and of course a little bit of sandpaper. And then we'll be able to, once they are ready, there is the hole to punch in the center to be able to get them together. Then I will use some plastic wire, a very small plastic wire, to be able to get them together, as the leg of the undercarriage was not that good. Put that together and make it back all together. So that's not big things, but it requires a little bit of attention, I would say, and a little bit of experience. We'll now move on to the last part of the decaling, the right side of the aircraft. So we're going to work again on that Air France tail logo, and of course it's going to require a little bit of fiddling and cutting and adjustment, but nothing too difficult, as you could see on the left side. It's just take a little bit of time and some caution. We'll now prepare the gear doors, and so for the nose gear initially, and so there is a little bit of, for this I use some plastic card, and luckily on the decal sheet I had also some instructions for those gear doors, for the main gear doors and the nose gear. And of course I've been using those parts, and then I'll cut them around it, and that was not too difficult, but of course it required a little bit of time. And then we have the proper shape, and we'll be able to add them on the aircraft. And this is the final result of that Fokker 28 from Air France TAT. I hope you enjoyed that build with me. If you did so, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you soon for another kit review and build video. Thank you for watching.